Hmm. So what does the idea of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency mean to you? Because I've seen and listened to a few people talk about it as this revolutionary piece of technology that's going to change the world and upend all of our current institutions, financial, political, societal, otherwise, that it's just going to change the entire world, upend power structures, finish fiat money altogether, that we will all just be using Bitcoin for the future. Um, uh, what is obviously these people are quite optimistic, but I mean,
Yes.
they're a lot closer to being right than anyone would have said that they were this time last year. So, I mean, I don't think we can rule them out.
Yeah.
But what does it mean to you? Like, what does the technology represent in your eyes?
Yeah. Well, I agree with those people. I'm a believer. To me, I really think that it's a lot of things at once. I mean, a lot of people just say it's freedom or whatever. But I think that, I mean, I have training in economics, and I have a lot of education training. I mean, I've worked in the field of economics in the United States for a while. And I think that a lot of economics, including monetary policy, is pretty scientific, which is to say there's no scientific to me is like error correction over time. And if people make mistakes with the monetary policy, they don't suffer as a result, I think. It's hard
Hmm.
to even tell that they have made a mistake because there's no like control group or anything. And so I think that the what Bitcoin represents is this safety valve. It gives people an alternative if they don't like how the monetary policy in their country is being run. They can switch to Bitcoin, and if they don't like how Bitcoin is being run, they can switch to some other cryptocurrency. So that it restores competition, currency competition.
Hmm. It's something that's kind of been erased in a way over the past sort of
Right.
20, 30 years with the like for in Europe, for example, they've erased nearly all of the European currencies in favor of the euro. The dollar has become like really, really widely used around the world. I mean, I still can't get over the fact I was in Vietnam, like the country that was terrorized by America for 40 years. And aside from their own currency, and sometimes even more so, they want the US dollars. I I still find that such a bizarre thing. I was like a bizarre concept because you're so far from America. There's seemingly no link, but people trust the dollar so much that for whatever reason, I mean, maybe that'll change with how much of it is being printed at the moment, but it's um, it's hard to imagine something other than that being the world currency. Do you really see like a digital currency becoming the global standard in a way?
Well, I certainly think it has the potential. I don't think it's inevitable, but I do think that it's absolutely possible. I mean, how it would happen would be these lower. Well, you can see how like if there's many, like say there's 200, let's say there's 150 currencies. Whoever's in last place, no one really wants that currency other than the fact that the local people that they trade with often are using it. But that's vulnerable to being taken over by like the US dollar, Venmo, or something like Bitcoin that is kind of everywhere at once. So you can see it just working its way up the list and having these lower currencies die and get absorbed into the larger currencies. And then you can just see maybe there'll be a world where there's only like, the British pound, the euro, the yen, the US dollar, the Chinese RMB, and like couple currencies, and then Bitcoin. And then you can just see, you know, there'll always be a currency on the list that is the lowest ranked. And that one, people will just think, well, maybe I should hold Bitcoin with my savings. And then if I want to hold Bitcoin, maybe I should accept Bitcoin, cut out the middleman. And then they'll just think, maybe I should try to earn Bitcoin maybe I should try to, now that I have all this Bitcoin, I want to spend it, cut out the middleman that way. Um, so yeah, it has that potential.
Hmm. So how close or how long do you think we are away from like a more mass adoption? we're obviously in the middle of like a big crypto boom at the minute over the past 6 months, where like
Yes.
the market cap of both individual cryptocurrencies and generally is just skyrocketing. Like I can't believe Dogecoin made millionaires out of people. It's just madness. I know my brother has a hardware wallet that he can't access with a whole bunch on that he'd mined in like 2013, so he's not particularly happy about that. But
Common story.
yeah, exactly. I mean, my mom can't get her head around the fact that he can't get access to it. She's like, oh, why doesn't he have a backup code, or why can't he email someone about it, or
email someone?
Yeah. But
can't email anyone.
Yeah, exactly. But it begs the question for me then, where do you get that crossover point where not just like internet denizens and people who are obsessed with technology, when does it become, or can it even bridge that gap, or are we simply just going to wait for the people who like legacy money, as I'm now calling it, and to sort of just
die off
essentially, or succumb, or
Max, I think it's commonly misattributed to Max Planck, but didn't he say, someone said science progresses funeral by funeral?
Yeah.
I think he didn't actually say that, but
I guess one funeral at a time, I think is the quote, but yeah.
Well, I think you have to consider like other things like the car, or also the internet, though, basically is the big one. You can see how in like the 70s and 80s and 90s, the people who got involved in the internet were very atypical. But now today, you can't exist without. You try to open like a bakery or something, and you don't have a website. You basically can't. So, that took a while, but there's a lot of reasons to believe it would be faster with Bitcoin, because first of all, all technological progress is changing at an accelerating rate, so it's just later. But also, the internet never like really, 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 really disproportionately rewarded you personally if you were early, like in like secret, untraceable, internet untaxable, like eCash or something. So there's like a huge incentive to like learn really, really quickly. I think that will obviously a second factor that would make it go much faster than internet adoption. Obviously, there's an enormous learning curve, but think about the learning curve with the internet also. There was all this stuff about, everyone had to learn about like how to unplug your router and plug it back in, and like how to like what were all the things that people had to learn, like how to use a web browser, how to use. You can do this now, but I remember when you couldn't, like when you used Google, you couldn't like type in like, where is the nearest bakery or something, ? Enter. Like you can do that now, but there was a time when you couldn't do that at all. If you type that in, the results would just be nonsense. And but you had to like learn how to use Google. Like, okay, most important word first, second word. I'll always put like troubleshooting if it's about. Put the name of the software program. They're like all this stuff that we all know now that we had to learn over a long. Many people had to learn how to type. Yeah. Doctors in America didn't know how to type at all until like many of them still don't even know how to type, because this is considered like assistant's work. They just write it out and someone else will type it. So, it's laughable, right? That you could have such an elite professional. But they had to do, when they did the electronic medical records, they had to have like talk-to-speech dictation software. This was like 20 years ago when that software was like cutting edge and it like basically sucked. They had to do it because so many doctors could not, type. It sounds incredible, but that was reality, because this was just considered like a secretary skill that you wouldn't do if you were the elite doctor. You should talk to someone who was in the industry. I don't know that much about, but that was like a shocking. There's just all these things. Society is always going to change. Remember, like barcodes were invented, in like the 50s and 60s. That was like a weird idea at first. So I don't know. You asked like how long is it going to take, but I think probably we look at how far it's come in the first 10 years. So the first 10 years went from totally being written off by everyone to now today, where it's still mostly misunderstood, but you do have a big difference today. I think Elon Musk like really was like a watershed moment or a milestone or whatever metaphor you want to use, because he happened to be the richest person on the planet, but he's also like inescapably serious person. Like obviously he's very funny on social media, but he he like means business, right? Like he's not screwing around. Like he will get the rockets to land right side up. If he wants to start, a company that puts a microchip in your brain, or he wants to start a company that, does
Bill Gates wouldn't get away
he'll
with
just
that.
do it. Yeah. That's the irony.
Yeah.
Well, there was a funny meme about that. That was like all this, like whatever Bill Gates, and then it was like the skepticism of the vaccine, brain control, and then it was like, oh, like hold my beer or whatever part of Elon Musk with like Neuralink or something. Yeah, he's going to volunteer to
Yeah.
direct brain surgery with electrodes and things.
Mm.
So, but he'll just be like, what do I want to see in the world? Okay, I want more solar power. I'll just build it. So something like that is
Such an insane. It's so mad to have that level of resources. And I've heard that there's some big thing coming with solar batteries and Bitcoin combined, and I have no idea what on earth that means. I've just seen it in about I've seen like 6 different things about it, and I was like, what on earth are these people talking about? So I don't know. I'll put the link in the description below of what I read if anyone wants to check out, and maybe they understand it better than I do. So do you see this technology, not specifically Bitcoin, but cryptocurrencies and the underlying blockchain, as just new money, or do you see it as something beyond that?
Yeah, this is a commonly debated thing. Like, will it just take over? I don't know if my point of view is the same as most. Many Bitcoiners are only focused on the money part, but I do think, and I have written about this on my blog a little bit, that I do think it could take over a lot of anything where you would want to have digital property. So Satoshi Nakamoto himself mentioned the domain name system. Like if you want to buy a domain like google.com or whatever, you have your own domain. Again, right now you really have like an account with someone who has an account with like ICANN, who has like, if you have an account with someone, you own the name because they have decided it's in their best business interest to not to let you buy one and then not give it away to someone. So that's the whole reason they can sell them for enormous amounts of money, because they take good care of them. But really, they're running this whole scheme. Satoshi was part of the invention of something called BitDNS that later became Namecoin. That was like you could do the same thing where instead of owning coins for money, you would really own the domain, and the algorithm would calculate very easily. You'd be able to figure out who owned what domain and how to get to their server and stuff. And so you wouldn't have, like right now, the domains can be seized by the government and closed down. In this, they could not. They have to find the server and seize that, but you could hide the server behind Tor or something. So I think anything like if you want to like all of your, there's a project, David Vorak I know is doing this project, SIA, which is like storage on the blockchain. So all of your private files, all of your logins and your identity. Obviously we have like the NFTs, which is like digital collectibles. But also you can manage like a cap table of like a startup or a company that way. You say, who owns what equity? Well, we'll have the blockchain take care of it. And then if you want to sell it to someone else, you don't even have to let me know. Like say I'm the CEO, I give someone equity, I give them 1% of the company. They can do whatever they want. They could lose it. They could sell it to someone else, and I wouldn't even need to know necessarily. They would just own it. And no one else would need to know either. Like, the lawyers or the exchange or something. So I think it could do that. I'm a big proponent of these things, prediction markets, which say that you could have this scheme inside hermetically sealed inside the blockchain where it would be safe from tampering, and people can bet on who they think what decisions they think should be made and what the consequences would be. So as a result of that, it'd be very easy to figure out like who we should vote for, or what law we should have, or who should be the CEO of a corporation, because you could just say, if this person was the CEO, the stock price would be this. If that person was the CEO, the stock price would be that. And that way it would have an enormous impact on something that wasn't money, right? Because if you were the CEO, you wouldn't want to be fired, right? You'd want to protect your job. But there would be this thing out there that you wouldn't be able to stop that would say, if they fired you and replaced you with someone else, the stock price would go up. And now you have to work very, very hard. You have to work very hard every day to make sure that you are making the company more valuable.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, follow me on Twitter, or sign up to our mailing list. Thanks a lot to our sponsor, ExpressVPN, the #1 most trusted VPN. Get lightning fast connectivity with servers in 160 locations across 94 countries. Keep your browsing privacy safe with ExpressVPN and get a 35% discount on 12 months of ExpressVPN when you follow the link in the description below. Don't forget my book is now out and available to order on Amazon and on bookshop.org. That's Brexit, the Establishment Civil War. And most importantly, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.